Okay, hey everybody, I'm just getting started up here. I haven't been on for like a month because my health has just been crap. I usually do a song at the beginning and I just didn't get it set up today. I'm actually happy I can stream. Mic check, see if the mic's working. Hey, everybody. Okay, mic check, mic check, mic check. Okay, I got a picture now. Okay, bingo. Basically, what I'm going to be doing for this is I'm just going to be digging for debris. Since the update, I've got three Trident killers that are killed, and I've completely broken them down and rebuilt them because sometimes the redstone will hang up, and it's not working. I can build another one in the same area and it works, but if I rebuild them right where, so I think they're kind of corrupted, like where the blocks are. I think they're corrupted, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to get them working. I'm probably going to have to rebuild them slightly in a different spot. Okay, the first thing I want to talk about, I've given this a lot of thought, and I'm hoping that people actually are interested in this. But I've been giving it a lot of thought with Endgame and Infinity Wars because if I'm understanding it right, the I'm understanding it right, the writers I think meant for the time travel to be part of that universe. I really do. And then when you talk to like Fahey, who I guess would be kind of the ultimate authority on it, he doesn't think it is. And here's the two problems I have with the general conception as I understand it. Tony was the only one who understood time travel enough to get the damn thing working. And if you watch it in Endgame, he was actually worried that they could go back, change time, and his daughter wouldn't be born. He was legitimately concerned about that. And so when you listen to, I can't remember the blue chick, can't remember what her name. It's the girl who played Amy Pond in Doctor Who. Her, Bruce Banner, they're like, oh, that can't happen. You just can't go back and kill Thanos and change the timeline. Tony was actually worried that that could happen. He was sincerely worried that would. So that's the first thing that I would say that that theory maybe not true because he was the only one who could get it working. I mean, even Thanos and that they really didn't have the ability to time travel. They merely stole it and repurposed it. And the other thing that I would say about that is, uh, even if it's true that normally you couldn't do that, here's the thing: Doctor Strange had the Time Stone. Any of the Infinity Stones can actually break the laws of what is known. Whether it's the Reality Stone, the Soul Stone, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that whole thing was Doctor Strange looking forward and guiding them. You know, hey, how you doing, buddy? Um, Cloudbot's working again, so you should be able to use the commands and stuff. At least I think I got it working again. But no, the he was using the time stone, so the regular rules might not apply to what's going on in the MCU. And here's the other thing, like there's a lot of the new stuff I haven't been able to watch. Like I haven't seen any of the I haven't seen any of the WandaVision or anything like that. But when you go back and watch Agent Carter, and when she was in the movies, like I think it was The Winter Soldier, she actually did. Ooh, hang on, I gotta get in a safe spot. I'm gonna join this. Hang on, I'm getting in on the raid here. I haven't done this in a while. But no, with Peggy Carter at the various times where she was like after like talking, whether it was an interview or in the show, uh, she never actually said who she married. She was real vague about it. She never had pictures of her husband. And so to me, it's almost like she was basically with him and she's just keeping it all a secret because he was supposed to be dead. And there's even some speculation in one of the videos I watched on the end game where when Captain America went back, when Steve went back, she was referring to the British Captain America. I forget what his name is, but she used his like civilian name, and they're saying that well maybe Steve Rogers was posing as him. And then the other thing is when you watched Peggy Carter's funeral, it looked like there was an old guy who looked an awful lot like old Cap. He was, if you watch it again, there's like someone that looks a lot like old Cap. He's the last pallbearer on the left. So it's a good chance that, I mean, again, that might be the writers and not necessarily Fahey, but I think that's the way it was intended. And I would like them to maybe do it where it turns out that if you go and watch, because there's a lot of speculation when Winter Soldier came out, when Nick Fury was under attack, there was I think it was a Ryder truck slammed into the cop car, which basically may have been an accident, may have been a little help to. Oh, Hayden joined. Hey, I don't know if you're in the chat, Hayden, but welcome aboard if you're on the stream. But there was speculation about who might have driven that Ryder truck. They were saying it might have been Punisher, and there's a couple other characters that had that ammo. So there was some speculation on that, and I forgot to bring a damn poker. So I do think that it's possible that because of Tony's greater understanding of time travel or the time stone in itself, the actual time travel may have been canon to what has already gone on. Oh, geez, I didn't. I really screwed the. That's basically what I got on that. I'm honestly thinking that it's possible that if you go back, hey, welcome aboard. I got 3 viewers showing up on the screen. Thank you, each and every one of you. Feel free to join in on chat. Current topic I've got is I'm talking about the time travel in the MCU, specifically Endgame and Infinity War, Infinity War. And that's about all I've got. If anybody's got any theories, feel free to type them in the chat. And then the other thing that I wanted to talk about, I was a huge UFO nerd. I don't know if I can always remember it, especially with the health issues. I get lightheaded. But I got to be honest with you, when I was still working, I went over to use the microwave at work, and they had just for shits and grins. I'm not a big fan of Trump. I'm kind of glad he's gone. I really don't want to do politics in here, so if I do drift into it, it's completely accidental, if not incidental. Um, but it's part of this story, so I'm going to dip into it a little bit. Don't if you it's okay if you don't agree with me on politics. That's fine. That's not part of this discussion. But I've always been a huge UFO. I like same thing with like ghost stories and shit like that. I've always been a big fan of them. But for me to be a diehard believer, I need proof. I've got damn near to stack them. I just got here. I haven't gotten any today, but I've got just about a stack of them back. I just haven't cooked them up yet. But been a little bit of a fan of the UFO. Always have been. Not gonna apologize for it. And I was at work, and there was a thing that came across news. Like I went over to use the I went over to use the microwave, and they had CNN at work, and they had the like in the break areas where you had the microwave, the fridge, and the other stuff. They had a TV, and it was usually on CNN, unless it was some in-house safety meeting, some other bullshit. And they did a thing where they were saying that let's say this was like 3, 4 years ago, uh, about 2 or 3 years ago, and they did a thing where they were talking about how the military was letting people know that UFOs were real. And I am not going to lie, the first thing that came to mind was what the fuck did Trump do that he's trying to cover up? Because I figured the whole thing was bullshit. I absolutely figured the whole thing was bullshit. And I figured if they ever hear him refer to something as Wag the Dog, there's actually, I think, a movie by that name. And what it refers to is when somebody in power uh, either creates or manufactures or revs up a story to cover something else up. Like Clinton was always accused of this, and some of it I don't know, maybe is true. I don't know. I don't think it was, but I think a reasonable person could come to a different conclusion. But like, let's say you had a sex scandal, you got a blowjob, and you wanted to cover it up, and so you go and bomb some country that maybe deserves to be bombed, but you weren't going to bomb, but you go and blow the hell out of that country, and then guess what? Everybody's talking about the war. They're not talking about your blowjob. And that was the theory, and they might be right. I don't think so, but maybe, maybe not. I don't. And that's what I figured this was. I figured this was a Wag the Dog, and he's ginning things up about UFOs. But the more I've looked into it, apparently it wasn't bullshit because the now he may have declassified it for that. But I actually thought the whole thing was a hoax. I literally thought the whole thing was a hoax. And now that I've had time to look into it a little bit, it came up in my feed because I watched something else, And apparently there was a bipartisan thing. Uh, it was started by Harry Reid when he was still the majority leader. Republican senator from Alaska, Ted Stevens, he's either dead or retired now. He signed on it because they were trying to get it some bipartisan support. And Harry Reid had and I don't know if this guy's in office anymore, but it was the Democratic senator from Hawaii. I can't remember what his name is, and he's either still there or he's been replaced by somebody. But that I can't tell you off the top of my head. He's not from my state, so I didn't really know him until they talked about him in this. Well, apparently they were on board and they were trying to find out. Well, this Republican, when he got wind of what was going on, he came to them and said, "Hey, I'm in. Whatever you need, I'll help you with it." And apparently he had served in the military. This is my understanding of my recollection of I think it was on the Joe Rogan experience where they were talking about my recollection, and I've had some really shitty health days, so take it for what it's worth. But if I remember right, he served in the military and he saw things. And he would have either been World War II or Korea, but he saw things or heard things and honestly wanted to get to the bottom of it. It was just a genuine thing. And what they were talking about on the Joe Rogan experience, I'm going to try and have this as organized as I can humanly do it while being on the fly with it. Uh, Harry Reid and them, they wanted to turn this thing into a SAP, a special access project. And what their hope was that they could basically get it set up as a special access project. And then by having that designation, it would be able to get into other SAPs. And they were hoping that this thing could leach onto other special access programs and find out what they knew. They were basically doing it, at least on some level, as a fishing expedition, is the way I understood it. I haven't streamed in a while, so most of the people probably are going to have a heart attack that I really haven't felt good. I was going to try and do it Tuesday, and I don't know if it was something else or not. I just think my allergies kicked in when I ate. Sometimes when I eat food, my sinuses will start draining. Um, hang on. But they were trying to. I haven't found any debris so far. Um, but they were trying to do a fishing expedition, I think, on some level with, and they were denied. They were basically told it would be a classified thing. It would be classified, but it wasn't going to be a special access project. Now, if these are true, these things I've learned from watching. Most of it's from Joe Rogan shows. Okay, and there there are currently special access projects which some people that maybe should have access don't have access to. And I want to go back to you might not know this. Now this is actually true. You should be able to look up and find enough convincing evidence of this. We have had two former presidents that I know of who actually saw UFOs. One of them was Reagan, the other one was Carter. And That's a fact. You can look that up. My understanding, and this is stuff I knew before. This is not new information to me. Um, President Carter, when he got into office, he actually tried to get access to the UFO. He wanted access to it. And the story I've heard, take it for what it's worth, is at the time the current head of the CIA, George H.W. Bush, Daddy Bush, future president, he denied it. He didn't deny that he didn't basically tell them, no, we don't have anything on UFOs. He basically told them that he did not have any need to know, so he was denied. And there is also rumors that Bill Clinton did the same thing, that he tried to get access to it and they denied him. Don't know if it's true or not, but I did hear that. And then the other thing that I heard, and this goes back to before the current shit. They tried to do that to Eisenhower when Eisenhower came into office. And the way I understood it is whatever facility he was aware had the information, he the way I heard it, and this might not be true, but the way I heard it, he actually showed up with a unit of military people. And he basically told them that they were going to basically do what he told them, or he was going to fucking breach their security with his armed forces. Because Eisenhower had the stones for that. And so Eisenhower got read into it because they tried the same bullshit to him. Now, telling you that they have purposely tried to keep aliens out of it. And the one thing I will tell you is, and this is another factual thing that you can look up. Reagan, when he was president, you should be able to find it. I can't tell you off the top of my head what it is, but it used to be up on YouTube. I think all you'd have to do to search for it is like search for Reagan's UFO speech. There's a speech that President Reagan did where he basically said something along the lines, I'm going to paraphrase it, but he basically said that, you know, all the problems that we have on the earth here where people can't get along with one another. He goes, if we were suddenly confronted with an alien, some kind of an enemy from outside our planet, how quickly would our problems with each other disappear and we'd be able to unify to fight this common enemy? And the best example I can give you of this would be take a look at the Middle East. Uh, the Middle East, the minute we drop troops anywhere in the Middle East, they're basically usually united against us to kick our ass and get us out of there as quickly as they can. Whether they can do it or not, it's a different thing. They usually unify pretty good when the great white American devils. But as soon as we're gone, then they go back to tribal warfare amongst themselves. Like there's an old movie. It's not. I mean, it's old now. It's called Syriana. It's got Matt Damon and can't think of the other. He was one of the original cast of ER. I can't think of the guy's name. Uh, those guys starred in it, and it's actually loosely based off of the real life of an actual CIA agent. And like he was asked about it, and by him creating a story in a fictional country of Syriana, he can tell a lot more truth than he would be if he actually tried to tell the truth. Because all his stuff has to be approved by the CIA, so he can make up a story that's a hell of a lot more truthful than anything he could tell in the fiction realm. And in there, Matt Damon is working for an oil company. He's over there. It's a Arab prince who is likely going to become king of the country, and he's a reformer. This is a guy that does not want to piss away the oil money. This is not a guy that believes in these medieval religious things. This is a guy that would honestly like to take the money that comes from the oil and make his country better. That's his goal. Well, while they're over there, Matt Damon has two sons that are with him. His whole family's there, and one of his sons drowns in a pool at party, and he's understandably upset. And the Arab guy, who this is the end of digging in this tunnel, the Arab guy actually feels pretty bad. And what it is, there's a faulty light in the pool. Electrical wires are exposed, and it electrocutes whoever's in it when they turn the lights on. Well, his kid was the only one in it. So what they did was, in honor of the kid, they basically bulldozed over the house, the palace or whatever it was, and they turned it into a memorial park in that kid's honor. And they also want to offer him money. And Matt Damon kind of loses it. He goes, "I got another kid." He goes, "How much fucking money do you want to give me to kill that one?" He was a little offended by the money. And while they get talking, the prince, he basically goes to Matt Damon and he goes, "I want you to tell me what you really think." And he goes, "You want me to tell you what you really think? You don't want that." And he basically pushes Matt Damon to tell him, and he goes, "Okay, you want to know what I think?" He goes, "I think 1,000 years ago, you and your fellow Arabs were killing each other like it was the national sport." And he goes, in 1,000 years when the oil runs out, he goes, "I don't think anybody's going to give a shit about you or your little fucking country anymore, and you'll be back to killing yourselves again like it's the national sport." And the guy basically goes, "Okay, fine. You tell me what you want to do." And he basically lays out a plan for him to take the money he uses and better his country. And in like 10 to 20 years, he'll have solar energy. He'll have industry. He'll have this. He'll have that. He'd actually be a real world country, not a third world shithole with oil. But what happens is this guy bites into it. He's like, "Okay, that's what I want to do then." And so they use George Clooney. That's the guy playing the CIA agent. They use him to basically, I can't remember if they killed the Arab prince or if they discredited him so that the stupid brother who just basically wants to spend money, bang whores, look at sheep's asses and whatever they fuck they do over there. So he's actually going to be in charge, and it just totally keeps the oil companies in charge, keeps the status quo, and he got used for that, and they set him out to dry. But anyways, there's that thing in there where he's like, "Yeah, I think you guys were killing yourselves 1,000 years ago, and I think 1,000 years from now, you're going to be right back where you started. Nobody's going to give a shit about you when you don't have any oil anymore." And I saw an interview with the guy that wrote that book, and I'm veering off. I'm hopefully going to get this back into the topic of UFOs. But the guy that wrote the book, he basically said there's a scene in there that was really happened to him, where he had to basically break into some rich guy's house and let him know that if anything happened to him or his son going forward, that he'd already set the wheels in motion with some of his buddies in the intelligence community that he would be killed. He goes, "So just let you know, you play your games. If I come up missing, if I do anything but die of old age, you're gonna die. Your fault, my fault, nobody's fault." I'm paraphrasing, but he let that guy know to put a little fear of God into him. And when I saw this interview, they asked him about that scene in there, and he said that sort of happened to me. He goes, "I when I started out in the CIA, he goes, I was a patriot. I thought I was doing this for my country. I loved my country." And he goes, "I had a moment like in that movie where I realized that I was basically being used by the rich and the powerful people who weren't accountable to anybody, and they pretty much did as they pleased because they could set me up to dry, they could set me up for a sacrifice, all just so they could keep that corporate money going." Well, I think this is where I get back into the UFO thing. This was a thing in the Joe Rogan experience where they were talking to it, and it goes with the CIA refusing to give information to Jimmy Carter. I've heard that story. I've heard some stuff implied too that they did it with Bill Clinton. There's actually a video you might be able to find where people were asking Bill Clinton about UFOs, and I think it was after he left office. And he literally shouted back to the person. Again, you think that he'd just sort of ignore it because the guy's crazy. And he said, "Hey, look, I asked him," he goes, "if they found anything out about UFOs, they didn't tell me about it either." So he made it sound like, and there was a guy that worked for him, he did an interview, and he had some kind of a, it's one of those jobs that isn't Senate confirmable. It actually has a certain amount of responsibility. And I can't remember if he was in the counsel's office or if he was at the Department of Justice. But he had something to do with the legal framework. And this guy said that when he got the job from Bill Clinton said, "Well, you got this job, do whatever you're supposed to." But he said, "The only thing I want to know, the only two things I need you to do for me, because I put you in here, is," he goes, "I want to know who killed Kennedy. And he goes, I want to know if aliens are real and what's at Roswell." And he said he couldn't find out. He did that, and I can't remember the guy's name. If I'm not mistaken, it's the guy that got into trouble because he went to the National Archives and tried to steal some documents. I might be wrong. It might be a different guy, but I think that's the guy. He got into a little bit of trouble. But the way he explained it, he couldn't find out any information. He really tried. And but anyways, now that we've got that on the table, these are stories I've heard, and there is some corroborating. Like I said, Bill Clinton, yelled back at someone, "Hey, I asked about the aliens, and they didn't tell me about it either." Well, there are some memos out there, if they're real documents, if they're not fake, that there was a guy, and I don't know if this was when George Bush was president or when Obama was president. But this guy got in, and he was a person who was supposed to have access to all the. He was basically the guy at the Pentagon who was in charge of all the special access programs. Um, they're like a unique classified program. The Black Ops are in this. Other, I'm not a military guy. I can tell you what I've heard. I can try and explain to you what I've heard, and I'm probably going to get some of it wrong. I'm doing the best I can. But he was supposed to be in charge of all these special access programs. And according to the memo, they didn't want to tell him about this shit. He actually found some of these special access programs, and he sent his guy in. I don't think it was him. I think it was one of his guys, but it might have been a memo from him to who was either writing to the Secretary of Defense or like the Secretary of the Navy. He reported to one of these two guys, and he basically let him know the memo in question. Ooh, can this guy get to me? Hang on, I gotta kill. Anyways, he started reaching into it, and this might have been where, because there was a guy that they were interviewing, and I'm going from memory. I think I got the memory right, but I'm not completely sure. I think the guy's name is Dr. Greer. And if you get into that guy, be a little careful. I don't know if I trust him completely, but if it's a guy I think it is, his name's Dr. Greer. And he was basically the guy in question, whatever his name is. They brought him in, and I believe this was when Obama was president, I think. And he was brought in to brief somebody at the Department of Justice, and he also met, according to him, with someone from the CIA. And the reason they brought him in is because they thought they were being lied to, and that's what they told him. I don't think it was Clinton. I think it was Obama or Bush. I think it was Obama, but I'm not 100% sure. Like I said, I wanted to do this for like a couple weeks now, and it was a lot fresher in my head when I had this idea to do this for a stream topic. And but they brought him in because they thought they were being lied to, like allegedly previous presidents have been. And hey, biker joined. How you doing, buddy? But according to what, well, and this is another thing to keep in mind, just a little added thing. There was a video clip I recently saw where they showed President Trump and his son Jr. both talking about aliens. And so, and here's my thing: the president's the president, but his son's a nobody. Whatever briefing Don Jr. was given, I think we deserve to see the same thing. If they're basically telling that dipshit about aliens, I think we should be able. I think that should be public knowledge now, because that guy could not have passed any legitimate screen for his classificate for classified information. There's just no fucking way. But he was brought in, but the guy, the way he figured it, when he got in there, he thinks that the CIA guy, maybe not the defense guy, but the CIA guy that he talked to, he honestly thinks that guy was just pumping him for information to find out what he knew. But they were asking him stuff like, oh well, where do we need to look? Who do we need to talk to? You know, like what can you tell us to shorten our? Because they basically wanted to find out what was going on. And whoever these guys talked to in this memo, they found out who to start asking questions of. And it led to private contractors. It led to like defense contractors. And you'd have to, you look around with the Joe Rogan experience, they will actually give you links or tell you how to search for it. And if I ever put this up on YouTube, if I can find the link to the Joe Rogan experience video where this was, if I can find it again, I will put that in there so you can like go to YouTube, check it out, and I might put a few other ones in there that are relevant to this. So you can actually go. You just want to go to AFKC Raw, and or I might put some clips up on Lag City, AFKC Lag City. I think the links are on Discord for that, but you'll be able to actually go and watch the videos that I saw. And but he honestly thought he was being picked over by the CIA just to find. But according to this memo, they talked to people, and it led them to defense contractors. And I don't know if it's the guy in question or if it was one of his lackeys, but the memo was written by one of those two, and it was about how they reached out to these defense contractors. And they let them know, go, hey, look, according to my job description, I have authority over all these special access projects. I am being led to believe that there are special access projects that you are connected to. I need to be brought up to speed on them so I can do my job. And the memo, and again, the memo might be a fake. I don't know. I don't know enough about such things to look at it and even hazard a guess. I really don't. But in light of the real things where the military has come out and said, yes, UFOs are real, uh, in this memo, the guy basically said that the people he talked to were pissed off that he even knew to contact them. He didn't know anything. And he said they were pissed that he even knew about them to contact them. And there was a little bit of feedback between him. It was this guy was reporting, he was getting feedback from his superior. And they go, well, who did you talk to? I can't say. That's a core secret or core classification or something. None of this makes sense to me, but it was something about it being a core secret or a core classification. He couldn't even put it in the memo to his superior. And the thing that was brought up, he goes, well, this has had to have happened before because you fall under our jurisdiction. And he was informed that yes, it did happen once before. And they did brief that person, but it was agreed that at that time that it would never happen again. And so they were pissed off. Hey, what's up, buddy? And it sounded like these guys really didn't want to talk. They didn't know what to do because in their world, this wasn't supposed to have happened. And the way, and I'm missing a lot of stuff. Like I said, I will try and, hey, thank you for coming. It's Pixel, right? I have trouble if you guys use the same names. I have it, but I think it's me or Bouncy. I think it's one of the guys I play with, but he plays as Pixel Pizza on the game. Um, but he just did not want to talk about it. And then the way the guy was explaining it, they basically told him that he would have to talk to their superiors and they'd have to talk to certain people at the Pentagon. Well, he figured he would have their full support because this was his actual responsibility. And the way the memo worked was, I think it said something in the memo about his career would be ruined. He would either be drummed out of the military or he would be, you know, knocked down in rank. He'd be punished. He's basically told to drop it. And like I said, it goes back with, and when you put it together with the other stories about Carter and Clinton, I find it entirely possible that this thing happened. I really don't know. I don't know. But these were some interesting things that Rogan was talking about. I can't believe I have gone this far down and not found one debris yet. This is unusual. I think I've ended up exceeding the usefulness of this area. But all the other tunnels I've dug down here, at this point, digging two tunnels like this, I'd have at least 10 or 15 debris. And I've gotten squat right now. And then another thing, I wished I'd have felt better so I could have done this a couple weeks because all that stuff would have been fresh in my head. And I found this really fascinating. Oh, the other thing was, uh, there is apparently a modern day UFO sighting, and it's called the Tic Tac. And what it was, military people have actually been allowed to come forward and talk about this. This might have been one of the things that was leaked on CNN a couple years ago. But according to the guy, I think he's a full commander in the Navy. I don't think he's Air Force. I think he was Navy. I believe he's out on a carrier, but I might be wrong on it. Take it with a grain of salt. What they did was they saw this object and they call it a tic tac because even though it was large, it kind of was shaped like a tic tac. It was a cylindrical object or like a tic tac, like a capsule, like a medicine capsule. And what happened was this thing was up around 40, 50,000 feet. And when he was being asked about it, they said, well, we understand it dropped altitude real fast. He goes, yeah, that's not exactly what it did. And they're like, what do you mean? He goes, this thing was like 50, 60,000 feet or miles, whatever. It was way up there. This thing was up there and it dropped to like 10 feet off the water in like a couple seconds. They go, we do not have anything that'll do that. And then after it hovered there for a little bit and it just stopped dead, he goes, we don't have things that'll do that. And afterwards, it just took off and it went way back up in a blink of an eye, just in a couple seconds. And they said, we just don't have things that'll do this. End of that tunnel. And then the other things that I'll talk about, if you have I can't remember if it's on the Sci-Fi app or if it's on the Peacock app. And I've been basically watching the reruns of it. If I don't know if the show is still on or not, but on the History Channel they had a thing called Project Blue Book. It was a TV show. Now, what I'm about to tell you to introduce this is actually factual. You can look some of this up. Uh, Project Blue Book is the name of the show, and um, there was an actual government program. The military ran it. It was called Project Blue Book, and this is absolutely true. What I'm about to tell you, Project Blue Book, and I can't remember the name of the project, but the one that Harry Reid started that I was talking about, it would have been like a modern day Project Blue. But originally, uh, you had the Roswell crash, and if you want to get into, I got to dig another tunnel. If you want to get into that, the Roswell crash, there was allegedly a UFO that crashed in Roswell, New Mexico, or approximately in Roswell. There were, and allegedly there were two crash sites. One of them was on, I think, the Brazil Ranch, and what happened was the military came in, and the people that were sent there were actually part of. It was the only military bombing unit that was authorized to use nuclear ordnance. This was the nuclear bombing site. Uh, we only had one. If nukes were going to be dropped at that time, it would have been this base that would have been called up. So these guys were. I, I think you would have to admit that if it was our secret weapon, the people that were there would probably be considered the tip of the spears. And they were sent to investigate it. And after the military was there, now these guys should have had access to pretty much all of the top secret stuff, all the advanced stuff there, because they were the bombing unit that actually had access to the nuclear weapons. They basically said, yeah, this is something that isn't from Earth. This is beyond us. And there's a lot of stories that go with it. Well, here's the thing, and these are factual things that I'm saying. This is what happened. It was new. It was like headline news across the country. U.S. Army says UFO or aliens were found at Roswell, New Mexico. And actually, you had Project Blue Book, but the first investigation that the military did into aliens was called Project Sign. That was the first military investigation into UFOs. And they came back and said, yeah, there's things that are here that are not from this planet. This is a factual thing you can look up. There's things that we've investigated that we can't explain them by earthly means. They clearly did not originate from any intelligence on this planet that we're aware of. And so everybody was fired. And then the next project was called Project Grudge. And, they fired everybody. They called it Project Grudge. They were kind of sending a message that this is not an acceptable answer. Regardless of what the answer is, this one isn't acceptable. And I'll give you an example, okay? You had, when Bush 43 was president, that would be Junior. This is something not everybody knows. Another factual thing. 6 nuclear missiles came up missing. And I think my personal opinion, there was more to this because I had a friend and he's a lot smarter than I. He really is. And we were talking about the war at the time, and he was asking me because I think he knows I follow this shit a little bit than he does. He's way smarter than me, every measurable way, with the exception of maybe sci-fi trivia questions and 80s music. I think that's the only thing I'm actually smarter than him brain wise, but he knows I follow this. We got talking about the mess in the Middle East, and he goes, we were talking about it, and I go, well, I go, they got us into Iraq, and it turned into a mess. And I go, now they're fucking around with Iran. He goes, yeah, that's what I want to know about. And I go, well, Iran has got something like 3 times the population and 5 times the area territory. I go, I honestly think they're getting us, those that want to get us into war with Iraq basically want to start a war where we're fighting Iraq and Iran at the same time, and they'll have an excuse to nuke one of the countries. And he goes, well, how? He goes, you don't really think they'd nuke it? I don't think they'd nuke it openly. And he goes, what do you mean? I go, this is a story that isn't real big yet, but I go, they had 6 missiles that went missing. As far as it was on paper, they were nuclear ordnance that was supposed to be scrapped, and on paper they were scrapped, but in reality they had been loaded on a plane. So they would have been basically, if there was a pilot who did his due diligence and he figured out these 6 nukes were on the plane and they weren't supposed to be on there, and he raised hell about it. And I honestly think the plan was, well, once we get these nukes where they're officially destroyed, but we have them, they could have turned them into a suitcase bomb, God knows what, and they could have, nuked a couple of these countries and blamed it on them or Pakistan or whoever the fuck. That's my opinion. And he just looked at me and he goes, "You're serious?" I go, "Yeah, go ahead and look it up." And they did. Well, what happened was Secretary of Defense Gates, uh, he became the Secretary of Defense. Well, what happened was he had a panel of generals. They were supposed to get. They were basically supposed to get to the bottom of how these nukes ended up on that plane when they were supposed to be scrapped and decommissioned. And they basically came back and said, "Yeah, we don't know." He fired every one of them. This is not a little thing, to fire a general like that, but he shit canned every one of them and put a new bunch of generals in charge of it, and basically letting them know this is unacceptable. Six nuclear missiles were basically going to be unaccounted for. Okay, now that's a good question. Now just I gotta stop what I'm doing for a minute. I gotta think about this one. Um, a lot of it would depend on who the country is, but it would. I'm not going to say I would. I'm not going to say I wouldn't, because it would have to. It would have to depend on a couple things. We've actually got military units that I think they call them missile X drills. They actually train to shoot these things down. And I got a feeling, if I was president, that's a big if, okay? I'm not nearly smart enough or emotionally stable enough for that, even when I was healthy. But in a case like that, if I was president, the Secretary of Defense would have standing orders. They'd be written down, they'd be on paper, that this was not a thing that he would even have to ask, or he could immediately scramble the Missile X teams to try and shoot these fuckers down. And if it was something where it was actually an attack, yes, I would counterattack. If we were reasonably sure it was an actual attack, yes, I would blow them off the face of the earth. Absolutely. But if it was like a rogue action, there's been TV shows and movies, and they talked about this, where I think Hunt for Red October was one of them, where you had some rogue Russian that was gonna, basically stealing some nukes, getting the code so he could launch them. If it was something like that, where it was a rogue actor, and you were reasonably sure you could minimize the damage, I don't know. If it's just like one guy firing one missile and you could reasonably be sure that we weren't going to get wiped out, no, I wouldn't counterattack. But if it was a fallout assault, yeah, definitely I would counterattack, me personally. Because yeah, we're going to get wiped out, but I don't think they should profit from that. Yeah, because you think about it, like you got Putin over there. If Putin nuked us, you'd have to nuke Russia just to make sure that the rest of the country didn't have to die under his boot. Because without us in the world, for all our flaws, without us in the world, there are far worse people that would be in charge. And we are not perfect. We should try to do better. We should make amends for what we've done and make sure we don't do it. But let's be honest, man, if Hitler or Stalin or, a whole host of people, Pol Pot, if they were in charge, you know, the world would be better off. And here's the thing: when you're talking about that, this is one of the things that's always been. I've done scenarios like this because I've had some pretty extensive training. I'm not military, never been military, but some of the people that I've trained with, they've actually created programs for the military. And sweet, I don't even know. Oh, good, we got people on. Um, but like, because there's one of my instructors. This is a guy, and he talked about this a couple different times. Uh, he teaches a lot of unarmed stuff. He actually has created a program for a local police to train new cops. And he was doing a knife thing, and he said, he goes, yeah, I got this thing where I ask my new students questions, and one of the ones he does is when he's got people joining his knife classes, is he asks them this question like, when would you when would you pull out your knife and use it? Okay. And he said, it was like an educational thing because it kind of let him know if like if it was kind of a thing to try and catch psychos or people that were a little misinformed. And he was telling us about the questions. He goes, man, you should see the questions I get on this, right? And then he talks to him. He gets all the questions, he reads them over, and then he goes over them. And he said, and he goes, I've seen everything. I've absolutely seen everything. You got these people that are just trying to, like what you did, this little question you did, and I'm not ripping on it at all, but it's real similar to. He goes, they're just trying to rationalize it. They'd be like, well, if somebody was trying to hurt my mom, or if somebody was trying to rape my girlfriend, or somebody trying to steal this or that. And then what he would do is he would explain to them that the time you should pull a knife is when you intend to take a life. And that was the thing. He's like, so these people were always trying to rationalize with what threshold or whatever would set it off that you would pull the knife and use it. And he basically let them know, he goes, well, regardless of that, he goes, the only time you should pull a knife is when you intend to kill someone. That's when you should pull a knife. If you don't intend to kill somebody, you shouldn't pull that knife out. You shouldn't pull it out to intimidate. You shouldn't pull it out to threaten. You should pull it out when you intend to use it. And when you intend to use it, someone's likely going to die, you or someone else. And another thing that has come up in these discussions from my personal experiences that, and I've seen something similar in either a book or a movie. Because when I heard this, I'm like, and that's probably where they got it from, to be completely honest. But when you use a weapon, it's not as important to look at what you're killing, but to look at what you are allowing to live. That that's the more important thing. And that's why I said, for me, it's just not a clear cut thing where, yeah, I'd nuke them. Hell yeah. If it was just a lone wolf and you had one missile incoming, or if, let's say it was a country like North Korea where, yeah, he might launch 10 missiles, but only one of them's going to reach here. In a case like that, I don't know. I think I would still nuke North Korea. Um, but maybe not. If it was just going to be one missile and you weren't, you were pretty sure you were going to survive it with damage. Um, yeah, I haven't been in a lot of fights either. If I do it more because I like the art. That's why I did it. But some of the people I trained under actually either were in stuff or they trained by people that like. one of the instructors I had, he passed away. Uh, he died like the day before my birthday, like about I think it was in '08 or '09 or something. He died like literally the day before my birthday, and that guy volunteered for 2 tours in Vietnam. He was a law enforcement. He was like a deputy sheriff down south, and he was actually Mr. T's bodyguard for a little bit. Not making that up. I'm literally not. And he was a student of Bruce Lee's, but I'm literally not making that up. He was Mr. T's bodyguard at one point. Um, but you learn things from these guys. Uh, I can't remember which one. It was one of these old military guys that I trained under. They got talking about medals and medals and shit that people get for being in the service. And the opinion of this guy was that the medals are basically there for the people who never went to combat, or the people back home, the ones that either never went to combat while they were in active service, or for the people back home to make them feel good, kind of like a John Wayne movie. If you go back and watch I'll get to your question in a second, I'm on a roll here. But if you go back and look at a lot of John Wayne's war movies, they were basically war porn. They really were. They made it look good. They made it flashy. Not all of them. And I like all his movies. Well, most of them, the really good ones I like. But because this guy, he'd actually served, and he basically said that there's only two types of people in a combat zone. He goes, there's victims and survivors. That was his honest opinion of it. The I'd kill everybody on the planet at that point. Hang on one sec. Oh, hey, Pixel. Yeah, I've got I've got one Trident killer that's still working. 3 of my Trident killers broke. The Trident killer for my raid farm broke. The Trident killer for my zombie farm broke, and the Trident killer to give me the bad omen. The Trident killer in my outpost broke. The Trident killer in my skeleton farm still works. So if you're using a Trident killer, yeah, it probably killed your gold farm. And I have not figured out a way to fix it because I broke the Trident killer down and I rebuilt it block by block, and it still doesn't want to work. What I'm seeing is the observer doesn't want to read the state of change in the hopper. I even did one where I put the hopper pointing up, or the hopper pointing up. I put a oh, oh, okay, that I can't help you on. But no, I'd launch if it was basically a dedicated attack to wipe us out. Yeah, but the thing is, if every country in the world, and this should make it a little easier to justify the decision, if every country in the world is launching nukes at us, the nuclear fallout's going to probably kill the planet anyways. But I honestly, if it was my call, and this is the thing, I can say it theoretically now. Who knows how you'd be? I might be under the desk, curled up in a ball, sucking my thumb too. But as an intellectual exercise, yeah, I'd fire back at him. Absolutely, without a doubt. I actually don't mind the question. I'm gonna try and get. I gotta remember. Gotta remember where I left off. Well, anyways, with Roswell. Um, they, yeah, Roswell, Project Sign, Project Grudge. I can't remember off the top of my head what happened. I think at the end of Project Grudge, it was the same thing. They're like, yeah, there's things going on that we can't explain. So those guys got fired. And then it became Project Blue Book. And the TV show, I think, does a reasonable job covering the subject. Okay. And now, those are the facts of it. Here's another fact on it. When they got done with Project Blue Book, I believe there is, it's like special, it's Project Blue Book Special Report number 13 or 17. These were things that were not originally released, but they have been declassified now. Um, that was the side report that they did. It was not included in the main report. It was not, it might never have been classified, but they definitely didn't advertise it. It came out years later. But in the special report 17 or 13 that it is, that was all the stuff they couldn't explain. There was even with the whitewashing they did on Blue Brook, there was things that they could not explain, and that made it into the special report. And then the other thing I would add to it is there is a guy, Nick Pope is his name. He worked for the British. It's basically the British version of the Department of Defense. It'd be like the Ministry of Defense or something like that. Nick Pope worked for it, and kind of like that guy I was talking about, where he was kind of in charge of the special. Um, Hang on, I'm gonna turn that down so it isn't fucking up the stream. But he worked for the British equivalent of the Ministry of Defense, and whatever his job was, all the unexplained aerial phenomena. I think that's the new UAP. Instead of UFO, they're calling it UAP now. But all the UAP came across his desk. All the UFO information came across his desk. And it freaked him out. It absolutely freaked him out. And he actually thought that it shouldn't be getting swept under the rug like it did. So he started making waves. And this guy has done books. He does UFO panels and stuff like that. Well, here's the thing. This guy started talking out of school about UFOs. Now, if he was a nut job, if he was just completely off his rocker, you think they'd shit can him for cause. But my understanding back at the time, this is one of these things where I'm not saying it proves anything, but I would say it's at least circumstantially supportive to the notion. What they did was they gave him a lateral move. They moved him to another department where he wouldn't be anywhere near the UFOs. But he basically had the same position. You know, they didn't demote him. None of this bullshit. And it just, that was one of those things that over the years has really made a lot of sense to me. It's like, yeah, there might be something to this. But anyways, with Project Blue Book, I have heard this said that if you go back, and these are by scientists, these are people that would know. If you go back and look, there was a guy, he was part of Project Blue Book, and his name was Dr. Hynek. And he basically came up with a lot of the explanations for what people saw: swamp gas, ball lightning. And when you listen to people, and these guys could be off their meds, I don't know. When you listen to these people, they they say that he gave explanations for shit that would not have passed a first year physics exam. Like if you gave that answer on your test, first year physics student, you'd get an F. You'd get marked wrong for that. And after the project was over, he has pretty much reversed himself and basically, I don't know if he's completely, might not be able to because of some, he might have signed security clearance stuff and shit like that where he could be prosecuted, but he's really taken a different tack now that he's no longer working for the government. And the other one that I would throw out there, and this is another fact, you can look it up. Back when the Roswell crash happened, there is actually an FBI memo, and I want to say you can look this up by looking up the FBI guy hotel memo, HOTTEL or something like that. Um, this is a guy that wrote a memo to Hoover, J. Edgar Hoover, who I believe was in charge of it then. And you can, there's actually, I think it's up on the FBI website, but he basically wrote a memo. FBI agent, Guy Hotel, HOTTEL, I think is how you spell it. And he wrote this memo to the director of the FBI, basically telling him that there appears to be two crash sites. They recovered a craft, they recovered bodies, and he's letting him know that he hasn't been allowed access to it. And that's a factual thing. Whether it's bullshit or not, that I can't tell you, but it is an actual FBI memo that the FBI is not trying to cover up. The other thing that has come out, and again, take it with a grain of salt, but the God, he would have been the intelligence officer for I don't know if it was called Roswell Airfield, but it was basically the military base that was sent to investigate the UFO. Oh, I found my first debris. Okay, we got our first debris. That's good. Yep, yep, yep. Love it. Um, what happened was is the general from the base is the one that sent. Trying to think of the name of the guy that actually went there, the intelligence officer. Can't think of his name, but he went there and he reported back, and his general is the one that released the information to the news that yes, we found aliens. Yeah, we did. Yep, yep, yep. And a new general got sent in, and he's the one that made the intelligence officer. He's the guy that posed with the weather balloon shit. The guy that was just basically, he had a look on his face like, you got to be fucking kidding me. So that this is the guy that reported, yeah, it's an alien. So they made him sit there with like balsa wood and tinfoil, and they made him the patsy for that thing. Well, somebody went and used a computer years later to go in and look at the memo that the general was holding. There's part of the page, and according to him, when they computer enhanced it, basically that memo, at least in part, talks about a cover up. They basically, it was his job to go there. He was basically given direct orders to go there and cover this up. That's what that's been out for a while, and I don't know if anybody's ever debunked it. And the other thing that was talked about recently, there was a guy, I want to say it was like 88, 89. This would have been like right during or right after I graduated high school. I graduated in 88. And I remember watching this on TV. Uh, they, uh, they, hard to do this and talk, especially when I'm trying to. there was this guy called Bob Lazar. And he basically came out and said that he worked at Area 51, or specifically, he uh, he claimed that he was working on. And they did an interview with him where hid his ID. He didn't know who he was, and he actually felt his life was in danger. And so then he came forward because he actually thought his life was in danger. And it honestly, and this is my opinion, this isn't a fact. It's a fact that he came forward. It was a award-winning journalist, hard-hitting news journalist, and he has been kind of a UFO reporter for, oh, it'd be like close to 30 years now, or a little over 30 years. And he has successfully walked that tightrope where he can report on UFOs and he can still cover regular news. He's still part of the I team in there. And before I forget about the other thing, if you remember the Phoenix Lights thing, or if you've heard of that, the governor that made a big spectacle of that, he basically said, "Well, yeah, we caught him," and he brought somebody in an ET outfit out in handcuffs. He has come out since and said that he was strong armed by the government to cover that up. And he said, "Yeah, that there appeared to be something there, and I went along with the federal government and helped them cover it up." But anyways, Joe Rogan had he's got a bunch of clips on YouTube where he's talking to George Knapp and other guys. And when he did that interview with Bob Lazar back in the late 80s, Bob Lazar talked about a brand new element because he worked on UFOs, according to him. And part of what made the UFO work was this element 115. It didn't exist on the periodical chart back then. And he gave a rough idea, like he didn't just say, "Oh yeah, there's an element, 115." I don't think 115 was the next one that was going to be found. Well, now that he has, like we're talking 30 years later, element 115 has been found. It's been made by a couple different countries. It lasts for a split second. We don't have the ability to make it. And a lot of the characteristics of the element match up with what he told them it was going to be. I mean, he didn't give everything on it, but it's like a lot of what he said is lining up now. And the other thing is, back then when it happened, he was supposed to have worked at the Los Alamos lab. He was supposed to have gone to, I think it was MIT. And he was supposed to do all this. Well, they had scrubbed him, it appears, like, see, he didn't have a record anymore. The Los Angeles nuclear lab or physics lab, they didn't admit he was there. The school that he had gone to said they didn't have any record of it. And Bob Knapp, from what I remember, he had like what do they call that, your tax forms, your pay stub or something else that he got. It's basically, it was something he'd gotten from the personnel files, like either his U2 form for his tax withdrawal, or it was a pay stub. And when the reporter tried to track some of this down, I'm going from memory when it happened. When the reporter tried to track this down, he went to a contact he had in the military and he said, "Yeah," or the government. He's like, "Yeah, got a guy, he's got a pay stub here and it's got this area code and this phone number as his contact information." And what happened was they they said, "Yeah, well, I'll look into it and I'll get back to you." And they basically got their ass reamed out because even having it was a big deal. And then the other thing is like, I got to kill this guy. But they, oh, Los Alamos, they didn't admit that the guy worked there. And, but they've done some looking at it. And what they found was, they found newspaper clippings where, because the guy in question, this Bob Lazar, what he did was he took a jet engine and he hooked it up to his Honda Civic and he drove it to work every day. He literally drove this thing to work. And then years later, I think I got this from Joe Rogan. I didn't know this back in the day, but he basically took like a Corvette, something else like that, and he made it basically run on hydrogen. And it was one that you could drive around on the road, but he literally had a jet engine that hooked up to this thing and he would drive it to work every day. And, and in this article, they basically said that, this guy, the jet engine car guy, uh, he worked at the Los Alamos nuclear lab, physics lab. And the other thing that came up is when they did a little digging, they actually found one of the labs. He found one of the lab's phone books, the reporter did, and it had this guy's phone number there. And not only that, before he had been outed, he took the news crew in there with cameras. And he drove around. The security guards and everybody else seemed to know him. He could just basically take guests in there with cameras and film. So it was a little hard for them to do it. But he said, yeah, there were all these people that were willing to talk to us. And then, like, overnight, it's like they're like, yeah, we don't know them. We can't talk to you. But it's like a lot of this has stood up the test of time. But, but I've just found it fascinating where now the military is admitting that these things are real. And so it's shown up in my news feed anyways. I can't remember what I looked at, but it brought up a lot of referral stuff in YouTube. But I started watching this. Well, here's the thing. I'm watching that Project Blue Book, and they had one episode in there where it was one of the generals or colonels that was in charge of Blue Book. And they were talking about how somebody had come forward with like an alien autopsy video. And I'm watching this in the show. And like I said, I read up a lot on this before. And it was acting like it was a real thing. Like, oh yeah, we got this alien autopsy video. And I'm just in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, this doesn't make any sense. I thought that thing was a hoax. And well, it might be the same video, that I don't know. But it's not the one that Jonathan Frakes came out with in the 90s or something like that, or like early 2000. That's not the one I'm talking about. It might be the same video, but this is one that was coming out back in the 50s. And what it was is it was one of the guys who had allegedly been strong armed by the military to be silent about the UFO in Roswell. And I'm just watching, I'm like, man, I think they got this wrong because I remember that thing being a fake. I literally remember that thing being a fake. I really do. And then what happened was, as the show went on, they kind of clicked on it, and then my memory started to come back from what I had read. It was a fake. What had happened is one of the nurses who had apparently been there on the base when they were bringing in bodies and stuff like that, uh, they had kind of ruined her career over it to keep her silent. Well, her and some others that were there, because she might have actually been involved in the autopsy, they basically recreated the alien autopsy video. They did it in a studio down there. I think it might be where the news was shot. And they figured out that it was basically shot in the TV studio. But what the interesting part, and this I remembered, and I think Hynek was an advisor, or somebody was an advisor for the Blue Book, because the story I remember, and it came back because I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what's coming back to memory when I was watching the show. When they started showing the alien autopsy, that general, and this is in the TV show, but it checks up with my memory, and it might be faulty, my health issues, I don't know. But it seems to me what I remember reading when it came out, that general flipped out. He actually thought they had the real autopsy because he literally started going into a cold sweat, and they recreated it for the show. The guy's like, he goes, do you know what you've done? Do you know what you've done? I mean, he was just flipping out. He's like, do you know what problems you've got? I mean, he's just a cold sweat flipping out. And then when it was pointed out that, yeah, it was shot in the studio, that clock, those lights all line up with what's in there, it's a fake. Then he sort of regained his composure. And they showed it pretty good in the show that, he was just flipping the fuck out on this. And the one thing I will add to this, and this came out from, and I think it's been reported in the news, they didn't make this up, it's actually been reported in the news. They found a CIA memo. Now, this would be the one that was shown on TV in the late 90s, early 2000s. Jonathan Frakes was the host of the documentary or whatever it is. But it was the alien autopsy video, black and white one that was supposed to be real. There's a memo from somebody in the CIA. The CIA thought that was the real video. They literally thought that was the real video. And they discussed that. And I thought that was pretty interesting too. And then the one thing, and this is basically where I'm going to end it, and I'll probably end the stream because I think I've talked about this enough. It feels good to be back on here again. But no, the thing that I want to point out, and this was a thing that was being talked about, and if I've got the story right, and this is actually coming from, like, I think military sources. It was somebody that was either involved or knew about it allegedly. But it would be that special acts program that I talked about that Harry Reid had started. Okay, the they the one guy they were talking to said that the reason the program got pulled, they were investigating it. The government had set them up to investigate these phenomena. And some of the stuff that was creeping into their investigations was stuff that they didn't think this is what it was. They didn't think this is what it was, but they said if it ever came out, they were afraid that it would look like the military was investigating the occult, demonic possessions and shit like that. These were the things that they were running into, and they were worried that it would look like they were either dealing in the occult or researching demonic possessions and shit like that. If I got the story right, that's what he was kind of talking about. And so that was one of the reasons why this program got dropped. And then I don't know what caused them to leak it recently. I think I've got that part of it right. And this is the part that, and I just ran into this the other day. There is a movie, it's called The Fifth Kind. if you don't really get creeped out by movies, then yeah, maybe you would. But if you don't like scary movies, do not watch this thing because I'm not kidding you. I'm not easily scared. I like horror movies. I can usually watch them. They don't bother me. I will not to this day watch this fucking movie in the dark. It still creeps me the fuck out. It's one of these ones that's actually inspired by actual events. And what it is, Mila Jovovich, and she's the main reason I watched it. I like her as an actress. I think usually there's a little bit of nudity in her stuff. I kind of like that. But she plays the main character. It's a psychiatrist or psychologist up in Alaska. And she's got people that are having trouble sleeping. So she's treating them for sleep disorder. And what she finds is that as she's treating these people, she starts putting some of them into this hypnotherapy where she puts them under and then gets them to talk about their events. And this is what triggers this because I just saw this thing on Joe Rogan where they're talking about the recent UFO program that has been exposed was basically talking about stuff that they said might have looked like demonic possession, right? And I'm watching this movie and I had seen it before, but it just clicked. Just wall this guy off. Bastard's gonna attack me as soon as I chest. And as she put these people under, what she found out is these people were being abducted when she put them under. They were being abducted. And again, this is actually based like, uh, and I will tell you this when you watch the movie, and this is the part that creeps me the fuck out. They've got these scenes in there where they did a Hollywood version. They did a Hollywood version of the scene. And in the copy of it that I watch, sometimes what they do is they put the real videos side by side with the Hollywood one. And in almost every case, the real video is fucking creepier and scarier. That's why they included it because they did their best at Hollywood. The real deal looked better. Uh, you've got people that are basically floating. Like there was one guy when he flipped out in the hypnotic session, he seemed to be possessed by something and he ended up in the hospital because he floated. He literally, and you can see it in the original one. Now, maybe it was rigged up, but he ended up having to be hospitalized because he had like spinal damage. One of the guys, he remembered the aliens in the hypnotherapy, and they show this. They put the actual 911 call and police camera, the police dash cam, and shit like that. And this guy basically went and murdered his family and then shot himself in the head. He remembered these aliens, and then he killed his family and himself afterwards. And it was just creepy as fuck. And but there's a whole bunch of these videos. And the sheriff that was in charge of the investigation, because like I said, this guy took his family hostage at gunpoint, shot him. Well, he started investigating her because she was the last person to see him alive before he flipped out and killed his family. Well, he immediately starts blaming her, thinking that she put him in the hypnosis, and then that's what flipped him out. And then when it happens again, and this guy ends up in the hospital, he was ready to arrest her. And after that incident happened, her she would turn these like tapes that she would record of her sessions and her notes and everything else. She would turn them over to a transcriptionist to transcribe them. And right after the second guy flipped out and levitated, injured his spine, had to go to the hospital, uh, the person that did her transcription said, "Look, there's a problem with this tape you gave," and they listened to it. At the end of it, it's just her giving her notes and all this, and they played the real tape. Alongside, they played the Hollywood and the real tape. Uh, at the end of it, she started speaking the Sumerian language. This is not a language that anybody knows. The best experts can translate about 1 in 10 words. And she started speaking it. And to me, again, when you hear these stories of people being possessed and they do exorcisms and shit like that, and they're speaking tongues, that's what this sounds like. It does not sound like her voice. It sounds like a demonic voice. And there, um, there's a scene in there because, like I said, when this guy ended up in the hospital, the sheriff showed up and was gonna arrest her. She was leaving. She was taking her family and getting the fuck out of Dodge because they, like I said, the language experts can translate about 1 in 10 words, but it's not a spoken language, but she is speaking it apparently flawlessly. And because they brought in a language expert, they cover it in the movie. He can translate about 1 word in 10. It's like the earliest language. It's earlier than Aramaic. It's earlier than Latin. It's earlier than Greek, Roman, that kind of stuff. And they brought in a language expert who translated what he could. And she was freaked out because he started, when he came and listened to the recording, he tried to explain it to her. She didn't know at the time what it was. She just like, this is fucking weird. She's going to get her kids and get out of there. Sheriff was going to arrest her, take her kids away. Her friend, who was another psychologist, talked the sheriff out of it, but he put her and her family under house arrest, and he stationed a deputy outside her house. This is the part of the movie that freaks me out more than anything. This deputy was stationed outside her house. She was told that if she even touched the fucking doorknob, she'd be arrested. And I got to get somewhere safe because I got to focus on this or I'm going to get killed. There's gas here. They show you the deputy's actual dash cam. He's outside the house. It's actually, I've got the clip. It's in my dash cam, or it's in my cam thing. You'll when I see it come up, I'm gonna just take a minute. When I see it come up right there, the thing that is in my cam thing now, the picture of the house, that's the actual footage from the deputy's dash cam. And you don't get to see it all there. I got what I could off the internet. But he's sitting there. He's got a visual on the house. And you see something in the sky. It's big. It looks like maybe a triangle shape. As soon as it starts to come into camera, the camera goes fuzzy. And you hear, and it's basically what's on the video, you hear the deputy radioing, and this is not the Hollywood version. This is the actual deputy's dash cam. He radios dispatch, and he's freaking the fuck out. He's like, you gotta send, and I'm not doing it justice. He goes, you gotta send somebody. Oh my God, it's pulling him through the wall. The little girl, and he flips out. Well, next thing you know, fucking sheriff and I think the whole fucking squad, all 5 deputies are there with him, and he's trying to get the deputy that was there, the eyewitness. Well, as soon as this guy started talking about a UFO in the sky, he's like, "Go home. You're no good here." He didn't want to hear it. And when they go to her, he's ready to arrest her. He can't process this shit. And the little girl disappeared, apparently, and it's backed up by the dash cam that something fucking happened. Apparently, the little girl got pulled through the fucking wall. And to this day, that little girl has never been found. and it's just creepy as shit. Well, then what happens is they bring this guy. He's an expert on the Sumerian language. They started looking for language. I think her husband had reached out to this guy. I'm not 100% sure on that. But this guy was willing to come. He was a scholar, and he basically came and he listened to her little audio recording, and he started translating it what he could. And he could maybe make out like one word in 10, two words in 15 or something like that. And he translated what he could. And what she ended up doing is she had her friend put her under hypnosis. And if you watch the movie, they actually show the doctor before and after the hypnosis session. Her body went through trauma. And I don't mean this lightly, and I don't mean to be funny, but she literally embodied the old phrase, rode hard and put away wet. I don't know if she was wheelchair bound permanently or just briefly after it until she recovered, but she suffered physical damage. And they actually showed the real video of her hypnotic recession or regression. Oh, hey, take care. Thanks for stopping in, lonely biker. But she got physically possessed by that thing. And when they were they were putting the transcript of the voice that was coming through her, and they were translating what they could. And yeah, I'm not kidding you. Thank you for all your help on that. I really do appreciate it. Just my health sticks with it. I can stream more often. But there were things about like it hinted like the little girl is mine. Most of the words could not be translated. And I think it got translated, I am your God. This voice that was coming over her, it was freaky as shit. And then at the end of it, they basically give you the factual stats that you should be able to look up if you're interested. And they said that the UFOs were not the only thing that was interested in that part of Alaska. They said the FBI had visited in a certain amount of time, the FBI had visited over 2,000 times to that area, which was more than the second or the largest city in Alaska of Anchorage or Nome. They hadn't even visited that area that much. They talked about the number of people that come up missing in that area. There's like an epidemic. And then the other thing they pointed out was her friend, the psychiatrist, and they changed the names of a lot of people. Anybody that did not want to be associated with the film, they changed their name. But her friend, the psychiatrist, he didn't want anything to do with the video. The sheriff refused to be anywhere involved in it. And the sheriff retired 2 years after the incident happened. He basically quit being a cop after that. The translator helped the movie with all of the translations. Everything that was translated, he helped with that. He did not want to be a part of it because he had gotten like a prestigious position at a college in Canada. But he told the director that he confirmed everything that he witnessed that they put in the movie as being accurate. Everything that he was there to witness, which would have been the hypnotic session where she flipped the fuck out. Everything he was physically there for that they covered in the movie. He said, yeah, that's what happened. That was the creepiest fucking movie I have seen in my life. I mean, I'm not kidding you. I watched Fire in the Sky, where it was a story about a guy being kidnapped, which there was some supporting evidence to that. Again, I could see somebody looking at all the evidence and not being convinced. I watched that one without being bothered a bit. Some of the other stuff that's out there, this one creeped me out. I will not watch it unless the light's up. Not the light on in the room. It's got to be sunlight. I will not watch that at night. I don't care if you got an army of people there. I will not watch that movie at night It creeps me because I hadn't seen it in years. I watched it recently. I did it during the daylight, and I'm like, when I got done watching, I'm like, yep, that still creeps me the fuck out. The other thing that I'm trying to get back to my base, and then I'll end the stream, but the other thing they talked about on Joe Rogan, he had his panel of people that I think he kind of trusts a little bit, and they were asking because they asked the one guy because he'd actually met the writer. There's a guy, I think his name is Whitley Strieber or something like that. He wrote the book called Communion, and it's all about alien abductions. And one of the things he asked that guy, because unlike Rogan, this guy had actually met the author and knew him, and he said, "You think he's telling the truth?" And the guy said, I've talked to him. I've had a lot of years to think about this. He goes, I don't know. He goes, I really don't know if that, because he said he's such a good horror writer. He goes, it could be true. It's a very compelling story that he tells, but he goes, he could have made the whole thing up. He's just that good of a writer. He really didn't know. And but everybody that hung out today, I appreciate you. Hope to see you again. Like I said, keep an eye out if you want. I'm going to try and find links for maybe not everything I talked about, but I'll find as many links as I can when I finally upload this to YouTube. If I get to it tonight or tomorrow, you should see the video clips on it's the link should be on this or the Twitch client here. You should be able to see the links. But AFKC Lag City and AFKC Raw, this whole stream will be on Raw, and I'll try and put them there, and then I'm going to try and break them up into individual subjects and clips and put those up on the Lag City one. But I'll try and put the links to that stuff. So if you're actually interested in the source videos that I saw, and I highly recommend Joe Rogan's. I mean, that guy, whether it's true or not, he usually does a really good job with his streams. And there's one of them, I will share this with you. I like watching this stuff, and usually what he does, he does like a 2 or 3 hour stream, and then he breaks it up into clips. I was actually watching the whole stream. I think I was watching it what was going on, and he had Dan Aykroyd on there. If you don't know who he is, ask your grandparents. He's a real funny guy back in the day. And he is a huge UFO nut. And Joe Rogan was talking to him, and they got talking about some Olympic athlete that had been on Joe Rogan's show. And Joe Rogan, this is where he lost me. I'm like, you know what? I like watching this shit, but that was a bridge too far for me. He started, I think it was him telling Dan Aykroyd that this Olympic athlete, she told Joe Rogan about how she'd had sex with a Bigfoot or something like that. And I'm like, oh my God. But some of the shit that he comes up with is just out there. But yeah, Dan Aykroyd has some stories about the Men in Black. Uh, he apparently had a TV show, and he is convinced that the Men in Black got it canceled. I don't know if I believe that. I don't think he's lying, but I don't know. It seems a little out there for me. But I'll put links up to that stuff, and then if you go to YouTube, you'll be able to get it and see in far more detail than I can cover in this. But again, thank everybody for coming, and you guys all have a great day.